A very good day to everybody. Welcome to the third topic in the series of learning the Jain tradition. In this lecture, we are going to understand the Jain Agamas or the Jain scriptures. In last class, in the last lecture, we understood Jain Tirthankaras. The Tirthankaras are the Arthakaras who give the meaning, who share their experiences to the people. They are the Kevalis who have attained Keval Jnana, infinite knowledge. We also call them all-knowing. Now, what happens once the Kevalis, that means the Tirthankaras, attained Nirvana, that is finally they disembody themselves and stay at the top of the universe, Siddhalok, forever. When they transfer, they share the experiences to the people, any living being. They also have their immediate apostles, or known as the Gandharas. Those Gandharas, they make or form that experiences into sutras. The Tirthankaras, as I say, are the Arthakaras. They give the meanings, which is easily understood to the people because the knowledge is there for the people. But once they leave, what happens? And there is this oral transmission of knowledge. So in the oral transmission of knowledge, what happens is the Gandharas are also the Kevalis, all-knowing, Sarvagnas, but they will not share their experience per se, but transmute that what is shared by the Tirthankaras, even though the knowledge is same. So they form the sutras in the sutra style, aphoristic style, or they make poetries in a poetic way or in the prose way, in mixed, and they pass on to the next generation, to the next Dhaviras. Tirthankara Mahavira spoke in the language of Ardhamagadi. The Āgamas, earliest Āgamas, the scriptures, are written in Ardhamagadi, that is the Śvētāmbara scriptures, and the Digambara scriptures are written in Maharashtri Saurasheni. Both are the form of Prakrit language. Minor differences in the letters, maybe some grammatical forms. Now, what happened 200 years after Tirthankara Mahavira's Nirvana? There was a 12-year famine predicted by the 5th Shrut Kevali, Bhadrabahu, in Magadha region. At that time, Chandragupta, the Mauryan king, was ruling. When he predicted the 12-year famine, many monks, ascetics, decided to leave Magad and go to a place where they will be safe. And of course, 12-year famine meaning we can't survive without food or water. So many ascetics went to south. Probably that was a place already being there. And one thing I would like to tell you, that right from the Indus Valley times, India was having trade relations. Inter-India and outside India trade relations were there. So probably the trade routes were already there, and the monks, ascetics, travelled to South India and they settled finally at Chandragiri hill near Shravanabelagola. Then, so few monks stayed in Magad, and many, along with Bhadrabahu, migrated to South India. It so happened that once the famine was over, now what to do, because the conditions were difficult. Many monks in Magad undertook Salekhana, and they they met with death, and those who survived or probably even the next generation of monks, there was the first council held at Pataliputra, today known as Patna, under the headship of Sthulabhadra. When Bhadrabahu left Magadha, he made Sthulabhadra in charge of the Jaina Sangha. Sthulabhadra, the most intelligent ascetic, convened what is known as the first council at Pataliputra. At that time, still, writing was not in vogue. It was only the oral transmission of knowledge. So, the Āgamas which were probably formulated at that time, Acharanga, first Srutaskanda, Sutra Krutang, Dashavaikalik and Bhagavati. Few parts of these Āgamas were formulated. By formulated I mean they were at least, the monks made the sections. Again I am saying it was an oral transmission of knowledge. And in this way they passed on the knowledge to the next generation. Now, when I say this is the first group of Āgamas, the Śvētāmbaras believe, idol worshipping sect, that there are 45 Āgamas. Because there is a differences of opinion, the Sthanakvasis believe there are 32 Āgamas. And the Digambaras completely deny that the words of Mahavira existed as they are. So they believe in what is called the Agam substitute literature, that is Shatkhand Agama and Kashaya Prabrut. We'll come to it in a bit. So, after a few years, of course, there was an expansion. The monks from Magadha gradually came to central India and finally they came to western India, settled in Gujarat, spread to Rajasthan, Maharashtra. Now what happens? Later on, after a few years, you have the second council at Mathura. Now at the second council at Mathura, under Acharya Nagarjuna, the second council is convened. The second council is convened probably in 1st century BC or around that time. You will find the differences, a little bit of 100 years differences between the dates. But nevertheless, in that second council of Mathura under Acharya Nagarjuna, again the monks met. It was not the same monks, of course they have died, the monks who met at the first council. But here in the second council, another group of monks, ascetics met, and they again formulated whatever knowledge any ascetic had. They collected, and collectively the knowledge was brought out. There were discussions, deliberative meetings, who had what kind of knowledge. Memory played a very important role. So again at that council there was nothing written, because as I said, it was still the oral transmission of knowledge. Then, now over a period of time, finally in the fourth council at Vallabhipur in Gujarat, they were under Devardi Ganishramashramana. 500 monks met and final writing of the Āgamas took place in that meeting, and 45 Āgamas were finally written down and formulated, classified, and of course you will see in those Āgamas, you will see the styles of writing and language little bit different. So as I said, few Āgamas were written earlier, composed earlier, few Āgamas were composed late, another Āgamas were still composed late, and a few groups are still composed late. You will, as I said, language, there's a saying that after every 12 kilometers or 12 villages, the style of speaking changes. Like that, so in Acharang, Sutra Krutang, Bhagavati, Dashavaikalika, those Āgamas which were composed in Pataliputra were still carried on probably in the same way with minor changes. From the language you come to know. Then you have the next group of Āgamas. As I said, 5-6 group of Āgamas formed at a different time scale, and because you come to know from the point of view of language and the content matter what was formulated first and later on. So like that, in that council convened in and around 5th century AD, that is 900 years after Tirthankara Mahavira, finally the Āgamas were formulated. Okay, so we must have lot of additions, deletions, editing, everything must have taken place, and this is what the Śvētāmbaras believe. And what we have today, according to the Śvētāmbaras, are these 45 Āgamas. So, and you find what I mentioned, the history, of the writing of the Āgamas. There is a book by, the canonical studies of the Jain Sutras or Jain Agamas. So you will find these stages of writing Āgamas in that book. And then, so Āgamas, known also as a Shruta Gnana, given by the Tirthankaras or Vani by the Tirthankaras. Now, whatever he has given, whatever to the Gandharas, transferred to the Sthaviras and transferred to the monks, ascetics. So there is a huge span of 900 years. Later on, what happens? It is that not only these Āgamas are there, but you have the commentary literature. But before that, I'll give you just mention about the classification of the Āgamas. So you have 12 Angas, 12 Upangas, 10 Prakirnakas, 6 Cheda Sutras, 4 Mula Sutras, and 2 miscellaneous texts. So in these group of Āgamas, there are different topics are mentioned. Like, say, instead of listing the topics, in the notes I have shared everything. You can read the notes, but we have to understand what it is. I mean the list. So what is there in the Āgamas? Of course, we have the spiritual path, code of conduct, stories or the narratives of the lives of some Shravakas, and of course you have in the Āgamas like Surya Pragnapi, Chandra Pragnapi, Jambudi Pragnapi, the mention about the cosmology, cycle of time, heavens, hells. In great details and depth, these topics are discussed in the various Āgamas. There is 5 types of knowledge, and the topic of 6 dravyas, ultimate reality, now tattvas. In the various ways they have been discussed in these 45 Āgamas. So as I said, Anga, Upanga, Prakirnaka, Chet Sutra, Mool Sutra, and through miscellaneous text. Now there is an interesting thing. There is one Anga. Okay, now we have 11 Angas, but there were 12 Angas. So what happens to the 12th Anga, Drishtivāda? The Śvētāmbaras believe that the Drishtivāda is lost. The Drishtivāda contains lot of information of maybe esoteric practices, mantras, and it is said the mention of other schools and everything was there. But how did it wither away? So there is this narrative which states that Acharya Bhadrabahu, the 5th Shruta Kevali, was meditating. There is this mention of Maha Prana Dhyana. He was meditating somewhere in Nepal. He was the only one in those times who knew the 14 Purvas. That is the whole Drishtivāda Anga. The one of the sections is 14 Purvas. So this is a knowledge which existed in the time immemorial. Now the Sangha in Magadha thought that if anything happens to Acharya Bhadrabahu, that knowledge will be lost. So they sent the most intelligent monk, Stuli Bhadra, to learn the Drishtivāda along from Acharya Bhadrabahu. So Acharya Stuli Bhadra went to Acharya Bhadrabahu, and Acharya Bhadrabahu started teaching one by one Purvas to Acharya Stuli Bhadra. He taught 10 Purvas to Acharya Stulibhadra with meaning. Now it so happened that it was a long duration. So Acharya Stulibhadra's two sisters came to meet Stulibhadra. He was meditating in one of the cave. He saw his two sisters are coming. So he transformed himself into a lion to show his power. When his sisters entered the cave and they saw, they got frightened. They immediately went to Acharya Bhadrabahu saying that there is a lion. Immediately Acharya Bhadrabahu understood that this knowledge is being misused. When Acharya Stulibhadra came, Acharya Bhadrabahu just mentioned, he debarred him from teaching this knowledge of 14 Purvas to the future generations. And secondly, he taught the rest of the 4 Purvas, he gave just the sutras without teaching the meaning. So when Acharya Stulibhadra comes back, because now he was punished. The whole Jain Sangha is without the 14 Purvas, simply because an highly controlled, restrained monk like Stulibhadra can commit such a mistake by showing off this knowledge, then one cannot trust the future generations with how this knowledge will be misused. So this is how, according to the Śvētāmbaras, Drishtivāda is lost. On the other hand, Digambaras say that Kashaya Prabrut and Shatkhand Āgamas are the remnants or the bits and pieces, the fragmentary portion of the Drishtivāda. So Acharyas Dharsen and Acharya Gunadhar, they were 2 monks. So Acharya Dharsen was residing in Girnar cave. We all know that is in Gujarat. And he was the one monk who could remember few bits and pieces of one of the Purvas. 2 monks from South India were called, that is Pushpadanta and Bhutbali, and they were taught these fragmentary portions of one of the Purvas. So they composed Shatkhand Agam from whatever left over fragmentary portions which Dharsen knew, and gave that knowledge to Pushpadanta and Bhutbali. So why Shatkhand Agama? Because there was the 6 parts of it. Okay, and more than 6,000 sutras. On that, Veersen composed a huge commentary, and Acharya Gunadhar composed from another Purva, Kashaya Prabrut. So Jinsen composed a commentary on these 2 both. So you have Kashaya Prabrut and Shatkhand Agama. Today what we have is with commentary, and Hindi translations are available, which the Digambaras say that these are the remnants, fragmentary portions of the 2 of the remaining portion. One is of the 5th Purva, one is of the 2nd Purva, what they have been saved. So they do not believe in the 45 Āgamas of Śvētāmbaras, and Śvētāmbaras probably disagree with what is the Digambaras say about Shatkhand Agama and Kashaya Prabrut. Nevertheless, both these are, you will have the topics overlapping. Okay, after all, the philosophy, the teachings are of ahimsa, anekan, aparigraha, cosmology, cycle of time, Nav Tattvas, 6 dravyas. Those are more or less the same. Definitely there is going to be a few difference of opinion within the content, within the measurements probably of the heavens or hells, or how many they believe, and those details would differ to some extent also, but nevertheless this is what it is. Now, so therefore this Shruta Gnana given by the Tirthankaras, handed down to today's generations, yes, so in the sutra style they are composed. Now what happens is, over a period of time, those are only like sayings or like reference books. Āgamas like sayings and reference books, but what happens, you need detailed expositions. So there are commentary literature. What is this commentary literature? You have Niryukti, you have Bhashya, you have Churni, and you have Tika. So Niryukti, Churni, Bhashya and Tika, they are the commentaries written on the 45 Āgamas. It is not that all Āgamas have everything. No. 10 Āgamas have 10, they have their Niryuktis. Few Āgamas have churnis, few Āgamas have bhashya, few Āgamas have tikas, few Āgamas have 2 or 3. So niryuktis are just a little bit more explanation. Bhashyas have a little bit more, churni have little bit more, and tika have little bit more explanation. So one is a extended explanation of the other. Now it is believed that niryuktis were composed by Bhadrabhau Swami too. Then Bhashyas is composed by Jinabhadra Gani and Acharya Mahapragna. Of course, we have Acharya Mahapragna today. Few years ago in 6th century AD they were composed. Then Churni were composed in 7th century AD by Jinadas Gani. Tika were composed by Haribhadra Suri, by Shilanka Suri, Maldhari Hemchandra and Malayagiri in 7th to 13th century AD. So you might have, say, Avashyak Niryukti, but we don't have the Avashyak, suppose you don't have Mool Avashyak Sutra is not there, but what we have Avashyak Sutra will be through Avashyak Bhashya or Avashyak Niryukti. Nishit Churni is there. Nishit Mool Sutra is not available to us. So whatever the Nishit Sutra is available to us, it is only the Nishit Churni. So in this way, as I said, and of course they are either in Prakrit or Sanskrit language, they are either in prose or poetic language. So this is how the Jain Agamas are composed. Over a period of time, when the Sanatvasi sect came up, they believed in the 32 Āgamas. They do not believe in the 10 Niryuktis and one of the Mula Sutras and one of the miscellaneous texts. They do not believe in. And these are the basic things about what we have to understand, that how the Āgamas were composed and how they were spread ahead in the time. To name the Āgamas, I will mention the name of the 12 Angas. Let us understand the Prakrit name. Okay, so you have Ayaro, Sutrakruta, Sthana, Samavaya, Bhagavati, Gnata Dharmi Katha, Upadakasha, Antakrita Dasha, Anu Uttorapa Patika Dasha, Prashna Vyakarana, Vipaka and Drishtivāda. So but I will give you the Prakrit name. Okay, Ayaro, Suyagado, Tharam, Samavao, Vivaya Pannati, Nyaya Dhamma Kahao, Uvasag Dasao, Antagada Dasao, Anuttora Vavaya Dasao, Pannavagarahana, Vivaga Suyam, Vittivaho. So last, just what I mentioned, they are the Prakrit names of the 12 Angas. Okay, now Acharang Sutra contains the most, they are the spiritual, it mentions the spiritual, what asceticism is and the spiritual path, and the second Tirthankara is about the spiritual journey of Tirthankara Mahavira. Sutra Krutang, the second Anga, talks about the 363 schools of at that time, other different schools of thought which were present at that time. Then you have Stanang and Sangvayang, which talks about the Jaina principles. Then you have Bhagavati, you have the 36,000 questions mentioned by Ganadhara Gautama, who asked Lord Mahavira, and in that how Mahavira Swami answers. So that is Bhagavati. It's a voluminous Agama. Then you have Gnata Dharma Kathang. There are the stories in Upadashak. You have the code of conduct for householders. In Antakrita we have the stories of ascetics winning over evil. In Anuttara Papatika you have biographies of ascetics who attained heaven. In Prashna Vyakarana you have 5 types of evil and their avoidance. In Vipaka you have the good and the bad fruits attained because of their action. And Drishtivāda I just mentioned about 14 Purvas plus the extraordinary powers and all the other things. So these are the 12 Angas, important corpus. Upangas are the supplementary text which support the Angas, and you have the Mula Sutras like Avashyak, Dashavaikalik, Uttaradhyan, and Oganirukti. And you have the 6 Cheda Sutras, that is Nishit, Mahanishit, Vyavhara, Dashasutra Skanda, Kalpa Sutra, and Brahata Kalpa Sutra. And you have the 2 miscellaneous texts or the Chulika Sutras, that is the Nandi Sutra and the Anuyoga Dwara Sutras. Nandi Sutra has 5 types of knowledge, and Cheda Sutra, we know Kalpa Sutra mentions about the biographies of the Tirthankaras. You have the genealogy of the ascetics, and you also have the Vyavhara, that is the Kalpa or the Achar of the ascetics. So in this way, my dear friends, this is a short exposition of the Jaina scriptures. Now, apart from the Jaina scriptures, we also have the mention, lords and acharyas till 16th, 17th century have composed numerous texts exposing Jain logic, Jain epistemology, Jain metaphysics, and Jain ethics. So what are these? These are texts, apart from just expository text, you have text which also use the method of debate, the art of reasoning, to argue against different schools of thought. Like Haribhadra Shraddha Darshan Samuchaya talks about the different schools of thought, how those schools of thought have talked about their reality, and how Haribhadra has criticized them. So like that, this was a whole tradition of writing, understanding and writing, and hence we have a huge corpus of knowledge with us today. And apart from that, we also have text on dhyana and different stories, grammar. You have puja literature, we have rupak kathas, we have politics also, we have dictionaries also, astrology, music. Then Hemachandra has written a work on different plants also, vegetation, environment. And there are, on maths, there is a book by Mahavira Acharya. So these are the many the intellectual and this intellectual activity. So intellectual activity is not a difference from spiritual activity. Once your knowledge covering karmas go out, obviously there is going to be a creative compositions which these acharyas have done. So do read the original text whenever you have the time and whenever you have the occasion. Here we end the today's topic of Jaina Agamas. Thank you, friends.